Hi, Sarah here from Cinemativa, and today I am going to explain an American sci-fi adventure comedy film, Gulliver's Travels, released in the year 2010. I am sure you're gonna love it. Movie starts with a man named Lemuel Gulliver, who wakes up in his apartment in New York and goes on with his morning routine. He talks to his superhero toys and dances in the shower, showing us his dizzy side. Gulliver works in the mailroom department of a New York newspaper company. That day, he meets a new employee named Dan, and after talking for a while, he buddy up with him. Actually, Gulliver is Dan's boss in the mailing department. As the two of them deliver their mail for the day, they come across Gulliver's longtime crush and a journalist named Darcy Silverman. He has been in love with her for years but has never confessed. Later that day, Dan brings out a circular that says he has been promoted to head of the mail department on his very first day. Gulliver has been working in the company for more than 10 years, but no one has treated him well and he never has got the promotion from the decade. Dan claims that Gulliver is scared to talk and it will never make him progress in life. A distressed Gulliver is walking out of the office and notices Darcy is working late. He gathers up some courage and goes to her cabin to ask her out. However, his nerves get the best of him, so instead, he picks up a random paper from her desk and heads out. Darcy asks him if he wants to apply for a travel writing assignment. A nervous Gulliver agrees to it, and now he has to submit a travel article the following day to Darcy. Now he is at home. He copies and pastes several articles from other websites to complete his writing assignment work. The following day, he submits the work to Darcy, who is now impressed by his writing skills and provides him with a new task. She wants him to go to the Bermuda Triangle and write an article about the legends of ships mysteriously disappearing there. To impress her, Gulliver agrees. Darcy arranges a contact over there and a boat for him. The next day, Gulliver flies to Bermuda, where he picked up by a man who was Darcy's contact. He takes Gulliver to an automated boat and shows him how to use it. Gulliver finally sails for the Bermuda Triangle alone in the boat. For the first few hours, Gulliver enjoys himself by reading how to build a robot magazines and drinking several cans of Coke. He soon falls asleep. After a while, he wakes up to a big wave in front of him. A sea typhoon hits, and he speedily places a life jacket on. The boat shakes vigorously within the water. Gulliver turns round to see a widespread sea tornado coming his way. Gulliver, along with his boat, is sucked on apex of the tornado, then right into its eyes. The screen goes black. When Gulliver opens his eyes, he cannot move his body. He looks down and is surprised to see some tiny men standing on his chest. Their leader introduces himself as the Commander Edward of the Lilliput. The camera zooms out, showing us a crowd of tiny people standing around Gulliver. He is pinned to the ground with tiny ropes and wood. Commander Edward calls Gulliver a beast. A confused Gulliver yells in worry and breaks loose from the ropes without much effort. Wondering that this is a dream, he attempts closing his eyes. Commander Edward orders his soldiers to bring the beast down. The soldiers connect their hooks to Gulliver's pants and make him fall unconscious. When Gulliver wakes up, he finds himself tied to a wooden cart and being pulled into the kingdom of Lilliput. The tiny residents come out of their houses to get a look at the giant man. Gulliver is pulled into the royal palace and presented to the king of Lilliput, King Theodore. The king's daughter Princess Mary pities Gulliver and asks Commander Edward if the restraints are necessary. Commander Edward claims that Gulliver is a spy from their enemy kingdom, Blefuscia. Gulliver finally speaks and asks the king where he is. King Theodore's secretary tells him that he is in Lilliput, the greatest nation in the world. Gulliver thinks this is a prank and asks about the hidden camera team. Next, we see Gulliver imprisoned inside a cave. He meets a fellow prisoner named Horatio, who was sentenced to life by Commander Edward for trying to court Princess Mary. The two are approached by Edward again, who listens to them, referring to him as a lame ass. When an angry Edward threatens to imprison them for life, Gulliver claims lame ass means someone who is brave. Happy with the answer, Edward takes both the prisoners to a field to plow it with the help of Gulliver's strength. He restrains Gulliver with a machine. Just then, 2 rings of a bell are heard from the palace, indicating that Blefuscia has attacked. They are trying to kidnap Princess Mary and have started a fire at the palace. Edward quickly runs to the palace and orders everyone not to save the princess, as only he wanted to save her. But Horatio asks Gulliver to do it because he feels Edward can't reach her on time. Gulliver easily takes the Blefuscian soldiers down and saves the princess. But the king and his secretary are stuck in the fire. Gulliver, in a hurry, urinates on the building. Everyone claps for him when he stops the fire and saves King Theodore. The king removes him and Horatio from imprisonment and thanks Gulliver for his bravery. He also invites everyone for a feast at night to celebrate the occasion. Edward is furious to see someone else being praised for their bravery. At the feast, the king asks Gulliver where he is from, and he answers he is from Manhattan. The people assume that Gulliver was the president of Manhattan as he is the bravest one there. Gulliver feels like a hero for the first time in his life, so he fabricates the story, claiming he was known as President the Awesome. Everyone believes him, except for Edward. The following day, the people of Lilliput build a massive home for Gulliver with all the facilities he couldn't get when he was in New York. The king sends a search party to look for his washed-up boat at Gulliver's request. Gulliver also makes them build a theater to fit everyone in the kingdom. Then, he shows them a drama of the sinking Titanic, claiming it to be the story of his life. Everyone is amazed by the tragic life that he has had. Edward inquires how he was saved after drowning, and Gulliver claims that he was resuscitated. Later, Horatio asks Gulliver to help him impress Princess Mary, and Gulliver agrees. The two go to the palace, and Horatio approaches the princess. A hidden Gulliver recites the lyrics of the song Kiss, making Horatio repeat it. By the end of it, the princess starts to fall for Horatio. But she is called by Edward, who has come to court her. The two have been destined to get married as Edward is the bravest of the kingdom. Princess Mary isn't fond of Edward, but she cannot seem to get rid of him. Somewhere else, the search party finds the washed-up boat with cans of Coke. Gulliver comes to the scene and finds his phone is still working. He has 12 voice messages from Darcy. Turns out she is furious to have found out about Gulliver's plagiarized article. She has to now sail on the same trail Gulliver came through to do the Bermuda Triangle research herself. Gulliver now doesn't want to go back to New York and face her, so he decides to stay in Lilliput permanently. Edward is not happy about the decision and tells the king he is suspicious of Gulliver. The king dismisses him, claiming that he trusts Gulliver. Because of his stay, the king gives Gulliver the title of the new general and demotes Edward to vice-general. A jealous Edward turns Lilliput's defense system off, making it easier for their enemies Blefuscia to attack. Blefuscian soldiers and their king see this and plan to attack Lilliput immediately. They approach the kingdom through waters and launch cannonballs toward Lilliput. Being the general, now it is Gulliver's responsibility to stop them. He nervously steps into the water and starts to splash it around. The cannonballs do not work on Gulliver, who is massive compared to them. Eventually, he defeats the Blefuscians and becomes the savior of Lilliput. The people from Lilliput fulfill all of Gulliver's wishes. They even build a model of Times Square so he would feel at home. They change their clothing to match that of Gulliver's. Soldiers are appointed to cut his hair and give him massages. One night, Edward barges into the princess's chamber. He claims that it is his right to come in any time because he courts the princess. The princess finally reveals that she doesn't love him and doesn't want him to court her anymore. An angered Edward leaves for Blefuscia to ask for help from their king. Edward's men have found the How to Build Your Robot book Gulliver had on the boat. The Blefuscian king agrees to help him build a robot using the book to battle Gulliver. Some days later, Gulliver is at the model Times Square when the bells of the palace ring, suggesting an invasion. Gulliver gets ready to battle tiny people but is surprised when a huge robot being operated by Edward stands in front of him. Edward challenges him for a duel. Gulliver has no way out but to accept. He tries to push the robot, but it is way stronger than him. It picks Gulliver up with his pants and makes him accept his defeat. Gulliver also confesses that everything he said about him being the president is a lie. The king and the princess are surprised to have been betrayed by him. Edward sends Gulliver to a forbidden place called the Island Where We Dare Not to Go, as a punishment. When Gulliver is left there, he is picked up by a giant little girl. Turns out the island are the home of giants. The girl thinks Gulliver is a toy and keeps him in her Barbie house, dressing him in girly pink clothes. Meanwhile, back in Lilliput, Darcy's body washes up on the shore. Gulliver had told everyone that Darcy is his princess back home, so Edward recognizes her and imprisons her. She meets King Theodore and his queen in prison, who have been captured after Gulliver's defeat. Horatio sees this and decides to travel to the island where we dare not to go, to get Gulliver back. He is minuscule on the island and manages to reach Gulliver safely. The little girl's dollhouse also has a skeleton of a dead US Air Force pilot. Gulliver uses the parachute to escape and fly back to Lilliput. He first goes to meet Darcy in the prison and confesses that he has a crush on her. She forgives him for plagiarizing the article and seems to be opening up to him. Gulliver has decided to challenge Edward for a duel. He doesn't want to prove his bravery anymore, but genuinely wants to help Lilliput. The following day, the two stand before each other ready to battle. Gulliver wants Edward to give the kingdom back to King Theodore if he wins. But if he loses, Edward will destroy the kingdom altogether. The two fight, and Edward overpowers him within seconds. Horatio runs to help him and manages to get inside the robot. He defeats Edward from inside, eventually depowering the robot. After that, Gulliver easily manages to defeat it, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Even Darcy celebrates the win. Because of Horatio's bravery, he is provided permission to court Princess Mary. The two finally kiss. But just then, Edward, who has reached the point of insanity, takes the princess hostage. But the princess, finally having enough of Edward, beats the traitor up in frustration. Darcy then kisses Gulliver for the first time. The Blefuscan king and Theodore are about to initiate the war again, but Gulliver stops them. He successfully helps to make peace between the rival island nations by reciting Edwin Starr's war song. And finally, he along with Darcy, return to New York City on their repaired ship. Cut to a few weeks later, Gulliver has left the mailroom job and is a travel writer now. He and Darcy are in a happy relationship. Gulliver has just completed a travel assignment, and the movie ends as the two walk out of Darcy's office while holding hands.